Enjoy with your headphones for a better listening experience.
Please watch till the end of the video to have you most scariest part of the video.
ELI5, what it feels like to be stabbed. I never want to be stabbed, and probably will think twice if I ever was to think about stabbing somebody. Thanks for the explanations. When I was about 15 or 16, I was climbing a fence and just got a brand new Spyderco blade that had an assisted opening clasp. When I jumped the fence, my knife opened in an L shape and went directly into my right thigh about 2 inches deep. The pain wasn't immediate, it took a minute and felt like when your leg falls asleep, numb and cold. It hurt more when I got to the ground and tried to move. The way it feels coming out hurts much more than going inside in my opinion. I did it slowly and pulled with the sharp side up, to not open the wound any more than it had been. The worst pain happened about 10 to 15 minutes later. It's like if you were to take a piece of ice and hold it on your skin for about 5 minutes, then poke it incredibly hard. That's my most accurate account on how it hurts, proven. I've had 2 decent stab wounds in my lifetime, and I can say this, the initial entry of the object doesn't hurt per se, it almost feels somewhat like a thump from someone flicking you but without the sting. Whereas other types of injuries hurt immediately, such as smacking your shin or a hard pinch, you realize what's happened, but you don't fully register the pain for what seems to be a couple of minutes. When the pain sets in, I can honestly say for me, it's bearable. I can liken it to a mixture of a subtle stinging combined with dim pulsing sensation that you would get from knocking your head on a doorframe of a car. Other than being very unsettling and very messy, there's a ton of blood. I can honestly say a good hit to the shin is worse on the pain scale. Both of my injuries were actual stab wounds caused by a knife. A kind of numbness occurs, a sense of something being wrong, immediately. There's something akin to an electrical jolt. Some wetness on the skin, as blood comes out. Pain comes afterward, once your brain figures out yes, that's pain. Nail in my foot. Being stabbed in other parts of the body or with other things may be wildly different. I was stabbed 3 times in the back with a short steak knife. It didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. It felt more like I was punched than stabbed, probably from their hand slipping off the handle and down once the blade was in. The real pain comes the next day, and it's more of a soreness from muscles being cut and from where the knife hit my shoulder blade. But I was only stabbed in muscly areas. Didn't hit anything major. Also, an interesting thing. My wounds were only closed with butterfly bandages. The ER doc said we only sew it up if we make the hole. Otherwise, we may trap bacteria in there that could have been on the knife. I had a knife go most of the way through my hand one bad night. First you don't feel anything but the impact, and then you see the blood coming out of you. That is when you panic, and it starts to feel hot. Really hot. Then, if you're lucky, adrenaline takes over and it becomes numb for anywhere from a few minutes to an hour. The duration of the feeling from the point when shock wears off until you are healed is a terrible stinging sensation accompanied by deep powerful soreness in relative proportion to any other injury you've had. Well, I got surgery at the age of 8 for a perianal abscess the size of a softball. About 8 months after constant draining, my body decided it's a clever idea to close up the wound. My surgeon noticed this and decided it needed to be reopened as soon as possible. So, he takes the razor-sharp scalpel and digs it into my skin. I was aware of what was going to happen. But because there was the pressure of the abscess, I felt a sharp pain, then a pop. After the pop, a huge relief of pressure. It hurt for about 30 to 60 minutes. I'd been stabbed in the stomach. It didn't hurt at all, not even after I figured out what happened. I thought I was punched. Turned out I was stabbed, all the way through, front to back. The front entry was 4 inches wide, and the back exit was barely a poke through. I guess because it was the side of my stomach, there was almost no blood at all. It took about 3 minutes for me to realize what happened. Despite there being no pain, I did freak out. Intestines are supposed to be on the inside, not coming out, so I panicked. I calmed down, put some duct tape to hold it closed and drove to the hospital. I had a few stitches and some cleaning, and I went home that night. The next day it hurt like hell when I stretched to get something out of the cabinet, but overall, I've had zits that hurt more and it's nothing compared to a tetanus shot. Now before you start thinking I'm some tough guy, I am a pussy. I'm afraid of roaches, bees, and all kinds of tiny insects, as well as kids without supervision, birds of any kind, heights, and damn near everyone who would dare go to a grocery store at 3 p.m. on Wednesdays, which is senior citizen double coupon day here. I'm such a wimp that the guy I thought punched me, I didn't even say anything to him, I just thought he was a dick, but I didn't want to get my ass kicked by saying something. I think it truly depends on your mentality. I was stabbed right below my shoulder. I didn't feel it at first. Then I felt the same pain as being cut like normal, then a numb ache of pain while I covered it up. It just ached for days while it took time to heal. I tried to break up a bar fight a few years back and got stabbed 3 times in the abdomen for my trouble. At first I felt nothing, thanks beer plus adrenaline, but then after I looked down and realized I had holes in me there was a dull ache. The guy got me down the right side of my torso, so it was really just fat plus muscle. He didn't hit anything major, so I imagine that's why there wasn't a lot of pain involved. It didn't really hurt until I was in the ER, and they were scrubbing the wounds. That sucked. I wouldn't call it a proper stabbing, but I once sat on a 5mm metal knitting needle, and it went a decent way into my thigh. It didn't properly hurt at first, just a dull ache. I pulled it out and hobbled upstairs to my OH. Then I thought I was going to be sick, so I sat next to the toilet. Then I got really hot and sweaty all of a sudden, so I tossed my clothes off. Then I was quite sure I was going to pass out, so I just lay on the floor, naked and bleeding. In summary, ridiculous. Least badass injury ever. Caught a knife swing to the forearm when someone tried to rob me at a gas station. Burning sensation for hours. Like it was on fire. But willing to bet robber's face was in a lot more pain afterwards. Kicked him in the chest, sending him flying backwards. While he was flying he managed to turn around just in time to attempt eating the fuel pump. Once I was unloading the dishwasher and a steak knife had been left with the tip pointing up. I wasn't paying attention when I went to a handful of silverware and ended up stabbing myself with the knife. At first it was a small pinprick kind of pain, and almost immediately after that came the numbness in that hand, followed shortly with an intense sharp pain. The knife went halfway into the palm of my hand after the blade came out. It was a dull pain for a couple of hours. I stabbed myself with a sword once. In my defense, I thought it was a practice sword at the time. I recall it thudding dully into the bone of my leg. I looked down and saw that an inch or so of it was embedded in my calf. I sat down and started yelling for my mom. She drove me to the hospital emergency room and made me sit in a wheelchair, even sitting by my side as the nurse stitched it up. And throughout this whole thing, I felt more sensation from the nurse stitching it up than from the actual stab wound. I was more afraid of looking at it than of the fact that there was a 2-inch long gash in my calf. The mind does weird things under stress, I guess. I was stabbed just about perfectly center in the sternum. Knife blade stopped at the bone, and there's only about a centimeter of tissue there, so the majority of what I felt was the pressure pushing me backwards and a shooting feeling like an electrical shock. Then adrenaline time, followed by nausea. It healed quickly, with a few days delay as it opened a little after some bench press. Would twinge if I stretched my arms to put on a sports coat or suit jacket or the like for the next 6 months. Would rather that happen daily than have an hour of sciatica. TLDR, if you're going to stab someone, other than Sandan Glottal, don't hit the bone designed to be a shield. I had an incident that resulted in me stabbing a potato fork through my foot. At first I did not notice until about 30 to 45 seconds later I put the tool in the shed and turned around and saw a single bloody footprint. That is when I looked down and realized what had happened, and for that time I felt no pain. Once I was aware though the pain was not fun. In all of the memories I have of intense pain, I only see myself in third person. Many times, I have had major incidents though I don't remember the pain, only what I thought and looked like. I remember some specific things around each incident though I don't remember the pain at the time. I do remember the pain while the wound was healing. I was doing a project for my mythology course in high school. I was making the underworld out of styrofoam. I was carving out the river Styx when my parents' fighting startled me and my hand with the knife slipped and stabbed my other wrist. It didn't hurt, but blood started pulsing out and I kind of panicked at first. My parents put a paper towel on it and I applied pressure for about 20 minutes to the wound, which wasn't big, only about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch went in. The wound stopped bleeding without any stitches and the scar is barely noticeable now. No pain surprisingly throughout the whole experience. Stabbed myself between the thumb and index of my left hand horizontally, blade went through my entire hand horizontally and out the other side by my pinky. You feel absolutely nothing at first, just pure shock. But the shock is so strong it literally paralyzes you, the heart feels like it's stopped, and you can barely breathe. You don't feel anything, which is the worst part. You know the pain is coming. I was stabbed in my arm with a knife during a fight. You barely feel the initial puncture, but once the knife is removed it will start to sting and hurt. Accidentally stabbed my foot. Not very deep, but at first I thought to stop it. Kept walking, few seconds later, blood. When I checked it out, that's when some pain hit. Not bad at all. But later, the throbbing and soreness is a bitch.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.